recording. So, um,
I've
Fair-
had some dealings with AELP. I noticed your postings about it clashing with ours. That's just when they do their webinars.
yeah,
I think they're doing them Tuesdays, but actually I think they're trying to push as much out as possible, because they've asked me to do some for them.
Oh, that's good.
And I just think they're trying to be in the space
Yeah.
as much as they can.
Yeah.
And I don't really think they're giving any regard to anybody else and what anybody else is doing. They're just trying to get their voice out there, and that's the slot they do, 10:30.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting.
I'm joining one on the 30th of April. I didn't. It's it is AELP, but it's run by Aptum, and that is about adapting and future-proofing your apprenticeship delivery. So, I haven't paid for that one, so I'm assuming that there are some free ones. So the one we were looking at today, was it £99 or something like that to non-members? So I'm on one, and that's 10:30 actually, 10:30 till 11:30. So I mean, if there's anything, if you want me to, if there's a recording, I can certainly share that information.
Yeah, brilliant. And I think because Aptim's an organisation, I think it's £1,000 that you pay if you're an external organisation to be able to deliver that, which enables it to be then free for everybody else, so they can do a little bit of advertising. I think that's probably, whereas Stuart is the lead in ALP, isn't he? So that's why I think this is the paid one. So is everybody else part of ALP? Paul, are you linked to them at all, or do you pay a subscription for their membership?
Yeah, I've been a member of AELP for a number of years now. I think as an organisation, they've certainly changed. They're far more commercially focused now than perhaps they were in the past. I think with the current climate, the argument could be that they haven't got as much influence as perhaps they had in the past.
I would agree.
But I think there are lots of other organisations now that have been, are being set up, and dare I say it, in competition with AELP, because at the end of the day, it is a business model that they're running.
They had to change, Paul. I'm not sure that you were aware, but they were partially funded by ETF.
Yeah. And
they were doing a lot of work on they were partners in some of the delivery around. I can't remember now which bit it was, but it was to do with apprenticeships, and then that was funding was pulled, and that gave a major impact to their income. So their prices went up not much after that, and then they tried to be a lot more commercial. So yes, I agree with you. They're doing a lot more commercial, and they're not necessarily the voice that they used to be.
No, and I mean, it's down to each individual organisation. I think if you think you're getting value for money, and that value for money can come from a number of different ways, then absolutely do that. But if you don't, so an example is with the session that's on at 10:30 today. So as Julie said, it's £99 if you're a non-member. They run those types of sessions really often. So actually, you don't have to attend many of them to then get your annual subscription back. They also do sector-specific forums, which again, if you're a member of, and I find all of those far more beneficial. You also get a free place at the annual conference. Sounds like I'm pitching them here, but I'm not. And again, the annual conference is really useful because of the keynote speakers, where you have ESFA there, you have DFE, you'll have AOC, etc. So that's really helpful, really informative. And I think what AELP have had to do over the last couple of years is be really, by being commercially focused, to being really protective of the information and the support that they give, and making sure that is members only. So again, your example with Aptem, that's a really good example where they get an external organisation to come in, and it appears that they're supporting the membership and anyone else who's interested, but in reality, it's a commercial offering from Aptem to them, and they're paying for that privilege. So as I said, I've certainly seen the changes. I've seen some for the better, but also seen some for the worse. It depends on whether you feel you're getting value for money out of them or not. And I don't mean to sound middle of the road. For us, some of it's really useful, but other bits, we're not. So, and we do generally sit down and review it each year to say, do we still want to continue this membership, or could we get that information elsewhere anyway? So yeah, as I said, it really depends on whether you find it useful or not in terms of what you get out of it. But it's a lot of money.
Yeah, I think I believe so. They've shifted to a lot of webinar content because they can't do any of the face-to-face workshops as well. And so I think they've tried to counteract that, to keep a presence and to be able to do the workshops, because I've done some workshops for them in the past, and those have all now been, there was some scheduled in and they've all been pushed back, and they've come with a huge list of webinars. So they really are pushing the webinars out. And I think in some ways, you know, it's okay, because it does, it means that if you have got some staff who are at home, they can maybe tap into those and be developing certain things and being made aware of certain things while they're at home, so they are still getting the benefit of stuff. And I suppose it's also their presence. But yeah, at the end of the day, there's only so much that people can take in, and there's only so much value that it has for things. So, and it's expensive.
Yeah, I agree. And the only thing that I'd add is, in terms of how AELP has changed. Before, I felt it was more of an influencer in terms of skills and education. Now I feel that it's more reactive, and dare I say, it's even sort of got a militant aspect to it. Whenever announcements are made, etc., and expecting then the membership to respond. So. I think that's where it's lost ground, is whereas before it would be influencing and at the early stage of any sort of legislative changes or so on, whereas now it waits for that to happen and then sort of reacts.
I wonder though if that's part of the environment that we're working in at the moment, because there is so much going on that it's very difficult to be an influencer, because so much is changing all the time, that there is this reactive aspect. I just think generally, and there is just so much that's happening and it's changing all the time. I mean, in fairness and justification for them, I think as well, I do have a lot of time for Simon Ashworth. I think he does seem to have his finger on the pulse, and he seems to know what's going on. But then you can pick up on a lot of what he's pushing out without having to be a member.
Yeah, you can, and I know. So I used to work with Simon at JHP. So yeah, and yeah, very knowledgeable guy, very intelligent guy, and absolutely, you know, when Simon is more often than not on point, and certainly worth following and reading up on. So I think he's a great asset for AELP. Absolutely,
definitely.
Cool. Well, that's our analysis of the ALP.
Sorry, Erica. Anyway, who's organised this call?
Brainwashed. We're all signing up now.
No, it's funny. It's interesting though. It is interesting to share the insight, and obviously it was good for. I think was it Anne originally who shared the link to the session that started the conversation. So I think it's good as well. So, so we were going to spend some time just sharing some good things that are going on around keeping learners engaged. I think that's what we talked about last week, wasn't it? So any nuggets or tips and tricks that people are using at the moment with their learners, with their apprentices, that might be good to share. And also just want to talk to you about getting Mike with us next week in terms of the mental health session, and if everybody still wants to do that, and if we can start it a little bit earlier just because of his diary. So yeah, so should we just talk about the Mike thing quickly then? Mike Thompson, is everybody happy for Mike to join us next week, and we start at 9:30 and we can advertise it that way?
Yeah,
it's fine with me.
Fit with everybody's diary. He's really keen to come and speak with us, and he's such a fantastic person, and I think we'll take a lot from that conversation. So okay, so let me go back to Mike and confirm that for 9:30 next Thursday then. Okay. And yeah, it'd just be good to think about, maybe just do a little bit of review of how we're finding working with our apprentices at the moment, and what are those engagement techniques look like, and if we're doing anything different compared to what we used to do, and if there's anything that we can share, any tips and tricks and things like that, because obviously everybody's now well, most people are involved onto online, but that means a very different thing to different people, really. So Sarah, I know you're kind of working with your learners at the university and stuff, and what kind of things are you doing with your guys at the moment?
So at the moment I've just got a load of marking to do, which is great this afternoon. So I'll probably just position myself in the garden to do that. So for my learners from the university, it's quite difficult because they're international students. So what I've been speaking to the lead lecturer on is that engagement, but also as well, because they are international, one of my mentees as well there is a Chinese student. So what's been really difficult for her is like the worry for her friends and family that are over there. But I've actually heard as well there's been quite a lot of bullying towards Chinese students.
Gosh, really? That's awful.
I know. So I think she's just feeling really isolated. So I think it's like what we mentioned from the wellbeing a couple of calls ago, was I'm not necessarily talking about the work, and it's like, how are you? Like, is there anything that I can do? Reach out to me. And I generally use WhatsApp as that's their sort of best form. I'm not on TikTok or anything like that. So stick with WhatsApp and just about use that. But it's more around, I'm here to help you as well. And she's lovely. So when I met her over Christmas, she got me a little Christmas present. So we have got a good relationship. And she was like, this is from my home country. So it was just really, really sweet. So I'm glad that I've done that sort of groundwork to build that relationship and that trust. So like now I feel like she has got someone here that we can do a Zoom call, have a quick chat, and I can just keep checking in with her. And then from an apprenticeship learning point of view, I just feel like it's really hard. So Abigail, for instance, one of them sent 2-3 emails and just nothing. So I know she's furloughed, but I think she is just literally like not looking at anything. But it would be good to sort of look at the bigger picture and what is she learning out of this? Where are the opportunities going to come? And I do some webinars for HR directors, so it would be great to get her that insight on those. I'm more than happy for her to come on. Because what I found from when I've done my mentees in Birmingham, where my events are held, I've got a great case study of one guy. Again, culturally, we're very different, age gap very different. He's male, and so like the dynamics of it, you wouldn't put us two together. But actually, we've worked really well. I'm really proud of him. So he's it was about 40-50% pass rate of the student, and then after the mentoring program with me, he was now up to 75-80. So for me, I just feel like it was just that motivation. He was able to sit around HR directors, hear their challenges, and I used to joke and say to them, this is the future. And I said, you need to be getting on board with all this tech and embracing smarter ways of working. I said, otherwise Barbara is going to be overtaking you. But I think it was just that vision, and then seeing actually, yeah, I really want to get involved in this. So from a motivational point of view, it was easier, whereas that's what I'm struggling with, is in there's no end goal for them at the moment. So I think they're struggling to sort of get motivated every day, especially when the weather's so nice as well, to actually sit down, do the studying, or engage with me on what it could potentially look like and what support they need. So yeah, not easy at the moment.
No, absolutely not. And I think, but you're doing the right thing in regards to the more holistic piece rather than the let's plow on through the content, I think. What's everybody else up to at the moment? Sue, what kind of things come to mind for you?
I think the difference with me, well, not the difference, the difference because of not being able to see them face to face, I think is the Zoom's made a huge difference. There's some people who've been a bit reticent about using Zoom, but I think it's just because they don't understand it and whatever. If it can encourage them to use it, they see the value of it, because it's still seeing that body language and seeing people face to face. So to me, the Zoom sessions have been working really well. And I pick up on what Sarah said, some of my learners are furloughed, but it's trying to encourage them that to use that time to be able to work on their ILM. And I think I did mention a couple of weeks ago, as Sarah's just said, about the lady that said, I've lost my structure and so on. She's now doing much, much better. And I think it's the face, although it's not in the same room, the face-to-face, I've noticed that the Zoom sessions go a lot better than if one guy, he's been struggling with Zoom, his laptop went down and he couldn't get on the phone on Zoom. And it wasn't as productive a phone call as it was if we can see each other face-to-face. So
to me, the Zooms, I think, have been a bit of a godsend as far as keeping the progress moving and stuff. And thankfully, most of my learners are making progress, because, of course, if I'm doing subcontract work, that's what the training companies want to see. They want to see that, you know, can we still do drawdown? Are they still making progress? Can we still see that on the portfolios? And while I can manage that, obviously that helps me, because I can still invoice then for the work that I'm doing. So yeah, I think the Zoom's been working really well. I've got a couple of my clients now who've decided that they're not going to get back on. They've now made the decision that they're not going to get back onto site until June. So the timetable has moved down a month. So again, we're doing Zooms in May. And we've just made that decision that that's what I'm going to do. One of the companies that I'm doing some work for in Kidderminster, they furloughed staff, because the furloughing originally was up to the end of May. They've said that nobody will be back on site until June anyway. Although the furloughing's now been to the end of June, I think they are going to try and get people back on site at the beginning of June so they can get the factory up and running. So for some reason, I've still got June in my head, but I've also had conversations to say that even if they do lift the restrictions, we're probably not going to be able to meet in larger groups. It's going to be smaller groups where we can still observe social distancing. So I've sort of gotten my head around, if I do get back into delivering, because I think the delivery is still going to have to be face-to-face. I've got a couple of colleagues who are trying to deliver using Zoom, and it doesn't work as well as face-to-face. So I'm hoping in June we can do some delivery, but I might need to split it so that we can do it over, 2 days or something like that. But it's the Zoom that seems to be working for me at the moment.
Yeah, it's definitely a godsend, isn't it?
Yeah.
I was talking to my friend last night that she's a HR business partner for the restaurant group. So they own Wagamama, Chiquitos, Coast to Coast, those sort of big brands. And what they're doing, because obviously hospitality is been really badly hit. So I'm not sure from an apprenticeship provider if there is any opportunities for you guys with the hospitality industry. But what's going live for them this week is that they're offering like a learning platform where anybody from their company can retrain. So it doesn't have to be in hospitality. So, and at the moment, she had to make 30 phone calls to make people redundant yesterday.
Gosh.
So I said, are you not furloughing? You are actually doing redundancy. She said, yeah, they're definitely at risk. And Chiquitos has just filed for administration as well.
Gosh.
So with what the furloughing was meant to do is to stop those redundancies and those situations, but they just can't. So that's quite interesting. So I wasn't sure if there was any opportunities for like the big pub companies or other restaurant chains for you to get involved in if you are providing those wider, like not hospitality ones, but other skills, so that people are going to be out of work, and it's a really good opportunity for them to retrain.
Sarah, do you know why they've made the decision, even though, because the furloughing doesn't finish until the end of June anyway, how come they've made a decision to do redundancies now?
I just think it's just because it's not viable.
Oh, right.
Okay. Yeah, Wagamama's is doing really well. Yeah, and I even said to her, I said, actually, I'm signed up to their mailing list, and I've been sending out how to do your katsu curry at home and all different ideas.
Yeah.
So whether I think as well, they wasn't doing very well before this. So this has just sort of been the icing on the cake, and they're going to keep their small brands. So they've got some Brimmer and Price, that sort of pub chain.
Right.
But yeah, I've got some contacts as well at Marston. So my old regional director was gutted that it's so sunny at the moment, because obviously we would all be in the beer gardens now, and that's what they're really doing in business. So it's not easy for them at the moment because the statutory sort of regulations have changed for pub companies and leasing and tenancy. So from a legislation point of view, the pub companies are really up against it before this.
Right.
It's not good. So I think a lot of people that are in hospitality hotels will need some sort of upskilling, retraining. So apprenticeship route sort of would be possibly ideal.
I wonder if there's some opportunity for AEB in those kind of stuff as well. I guess it depends where the funding is, does it, Paul, in regards to what's been put aside in the pot?
Yeah, it does. I think for main or prime providers who have direct contracts, they should already know, well, they will already know what their allocation is for going forward for next year. So there's that continuity there from an AEB perspective. It just, again, it comes back to the question of how well placed, how well positioned they are to be able to deliver that fully remotely. So clearly, Adam a couple of weeks ago was very well placed and had some really good numbers over a short period of time to be able to do that. I guess with that comes risk. The risk is for those individuals to continue to participate and therefore complete and achieve. So that has a potentially negative impact on your achievement rates. I think Adam made a really good point of only enrolling on one course at a time to try and manage that risk rather than concurrently, which might be tempting for some providers to draw down if they've got a lot of contract value left. I think if there's any positives in terms of the timing of this, at least it happened towards the end of the contract year when most providers will have their delivery in place already. Whereas if it had happened at the beginning of the academic year, it would have been far more difficult. But that's why that planning is already happening for the start of the next academic year and what that's going to look like. Just picking up on a point that Sue made, it would be really interesting, particularly following Chris Whitty's comments yesterday at the daily briefing, where he anticipates social distancing happening for the remainder of this calendar year, what that really is going to look like. So from an education perspective, because there's conflicting messages, isn't there? Are the schools going back? Would they be going back before the summer break, or are they going back in September? And even if it is September, what does that look like? What does that look like, and is that going to be different for primary and secondary compared to colleges and adult education, for example? And I've no doubt that they're already discussing what that needs to look like and what those guidelines will be. But again, we were talking about AELP and its influence earlier. It'd be really good if they were able to, as an organisation, start having those conversations and making those suggestions, so that we, as providers, can start to plan what that needs to look like for us and make sure that we get the message out to our learners and our employers as to how we're going to ensure that there's a continuity there.
Yeah.
That's what we need.
Yeah, I think as well, I only watch the briefing in the news because I don't watch all the other rubbish, but you were getting conflicting messages as well about vaccines and vaccinations. Chris Whitty said that he doesn't think there's going to be a vaccination until next year. And yet there was one of the scientists from Imperial College had said he thought there may be one towards the end of this year. So I actually don't see, until obviously they don't know. I think they started some trials today. But I think we're not going to get anywhere back to normal until they do get a vaccine. I think probably Chris Whitty's right. The social distancing at some stage is going to be, and as Paul said, it's going to affect how we deliver. Because there is going to have to be some of it because what they don't want is another peak, of course.
Yeah.
I think the conflicting messages around, taking vaccines as an example, I think government's been really clear that it's put the funding forward, because I think there were talks about September. Yeah. But what they're saying is that they're putting the funding in to try and get the vaccine as quickly as possible. But you're right, the experts, and let's be honest, our government has placed all of its decisions based on those scientific experts. So that's who we need to listen to. They're saying not until next year. The likelihood is it's not until next year. And I've used this a number of times in the past. One of the longest ongoing challenges, and it's open to pretty much every organisation, every university in the country, has been to solve the issue with London Underground and air conditioning. And they've never been able to come up with, and I think the last time I looked, it was £1 million prize. So and it's only the concept, whoever comes up with a concept that works, it's £1 million prize, and it's never been solved. And it's been probably 2 decades it's been out there. So that's what I'm saying is government are making the funding available. That's one thing, but actually in reality, if they find a vaccine and how long that's going to take is a totally different scenario. But yeah, all of this starts to influence our decision making and our thinking about what we're going to do, how we're going to do it, and then the financial planning that's needed behind that as well.
Yeah,
I do worry as well around providers who are in the space where it's kind of head in the sand. I'm going to furlough some assessors. I'm going to kind of keep scrabbling on with a bit of funding, and I'm not going to think about virtual or online delivery because I'm going to wait until the good old face-to-face comes back but everything you've just said, that could be not until next
Yeah.
year potentially, could it, like you said, Sue, because of the social distancing measures that might still be in place. So I'm seeing a real distinct two segmentations at the moment. I'm working with some providers who are like, Erica, give me everything you've got, you know, let's stick you on a retainer, here's some money to train our guys. They need to deliver really good virtual classrooms, and they need to be able to develop it, they need to be able to talk about it with the clients, with the apprentices. And then there's other providers that I speak to, I'm like, are you sure you don't want a little bit of help? And they're like, la 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 la, it's all going to go away. And it's like, don't think it's going to.
Yeah, I think the delivery is, sorry, I think the delivery is just going to be different. I don't think, you know, I don't think we're going to get back to deliver. And in two of my groups, there's 15 in each group. That's not going to happen. But I think I'd like to do it face to face, but be able to do it in smaller groups. So the plan of the delivery is going to be different, because we're going to have to spread it over a longer period of time.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm also noticing there's a lot of fear that, so we've just thrown everybody online, and there's a lot of fear now around, oh my God, I'm actually having to do it and I'm having to use the technology. And because of that, people find workarounds.
Yeah.
So there's one provider that I'm working with where we've done some initial upskill, but there's been no follow on, and they've just kind of let them get on with it. And they've all gone, yeah, this is brilliant, we're definitely going to do it. And then they've started doing pre-recorded sessions of all of their information. So, and they said, oh yeah, we're doing online learning. It's online learning. It's like, it's really not. It's just you talking over a PowerPoint for half an hour. So from a quality assurance perspective, we've now had to go back to that team to say that's not what we agreed. And off the back of that, we're writing a content strategy to say, actually, this is our go-to. We will need backup for people who can't attend, and that's where the recordings and things come in. But actually, that's not from a learner experience. You just expect me just to watch recordings constantly. That's crap. That's not an apprenticeship. So so it's really interesting watching all of these conversations and people's behavior, and like being driven by their own fear around having to do this stuff. It's just fascinating to watch.
And I spoke to a HR director yesterday that's not very happy because he's doing a level 7 in employment law, and that's usually delivered in the classroom. So he travels from Leicester to Birmingham to do it, and now instead of doing 2 days in the classroom, he's got 2 days on Zoom. Oof, and he was like, that is not my learning style. So he's off, because he's
that's
paid
knackering
for it. Yeah, he knows that we've been being like the go-to person with all this for a council. He's like, my phone's just going mental as it is at the moment. He's like, I just wish they'd just postpone it till I can get there sort of face to face. So he's annoyed from like an end user point of view that he's paid all this money. It's not his learning style. He's inundated with work at the moment as it is. So a bit annoyed really at that. And he said he knows that come 2 o'clock, they'll be like, right, okay, let's call it a day. So he's not going to get out of it what he should from a learning point of view.
It's interesting, Sarah, that I think, again, the point Erica's made is really important. The delivery's got to be completely different. You can't just take a 6-hour classroom session and say, let's do it with Zoom. That's not going to work. As you say, it's not going to be motivational. They're not going to learn anything. And they, you know, it's such a shame that they've just done that for him and he's losing the motivation to do it. And the quality, he's not getting out of it what he needs. So, you know, they need support from people like Erica to be able to say, how are we going to deliver? If we're going to have to deliver some of it using Zoom, how can we do that where at least it keeps them engaged?
Yeah, and it was quite funny yesterday. So I was on just a HR webinar, and there was a lady that's like leadership development trainer. So when I said to her, like, it's so different on a Zoom call, as in the speed of everything that I'm finding. So I can do events and it can take me 2 months to book it. If I want to do an event online, I can turn it around within 2 days. And I said, and actually on the call, they say it's like you have to check in with your delegates every 15 minutes. And I said, whereas I've been told online, it's every 4 minutes. And her face was like, like that. And I was like, yeah, so it's a massive education piece for the L&D management.
Yeah.
But there's the opportunity for us all. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
We've managed a global pandemic for them to get there, but they'll get there.
We've managed to sort a TAP session, so it would normally take, I think it's 5 weeks, and they're doing it for us over 3 weeks instead. So we're doing sort of, I think it's 2 half days, and then we do the assessment at the end. But I'm hoping that I can at least start, you know, looking at how I can get some of the content online, and you know, the exact same things that you're just saying there. And I understand why people are just thinking it'll do because we're getting it done, but it's not motivating anybody or engaging and that sort of thing. So yeah, so hopefully in the next 3 weeks I should be able to start doing some more stuff. So I've got some things like diversity and new starter inductions to look at, but ultimately I'm also wanting to be able to put some of the sessions, because I've got a cohort that's due in May to have the next face-to-face workshop. So I want to try and do some of it, even if it's broken down into, you know, a 40-minute chunk, and then they go away and do something, and at least they're working towards their apprenticeship, so they can show it as time on the job sort of thing. So
yeah, there's still a lot I don't know about Zoom. So even on a call this week, they did breakout rooms, and I didn't know you could do that.
Oh yeah, I've used breakout rooms. It's good.
Yeah.
Anne shared something, I don't know if she put it on the group or not, about, it was like a teacher, I think it was, and he was talking through it. But I mean, if she's not shared, I can put it on there. But it was he was just saying, like, these are the settings that you need to be aware of.
Yeah, I watched that. It was really good, wasn't it?
It was very straightforward. And I'd literally got it on my screen in front of me, and on my other screen I was sort of setting all my settings up. So you know, and there were some key things there about breakout rooms and all that sort of stuff. But it was really useful information, very straightforward.
Yeah, he's good. Teachertraining.com or something like that, wasn't he?
Yeah,
he's from. I know what you mean. Yeah, I shared it as well. I'll show you a little quip around breakout rooms this week. So I was training a training company, and we went into breakout rooms, and I said at the beginning, you set it all up. So you'll go into that room, and if you've had the experience, you'll see you move on the screen, don't you, into your individual rooms and stuff. And I said, I'm going to come in and just dip into each of the rooms just to make sure you're okay and you're all in and all the rest of it. I went straight into the first room, and I didn't realise I was in the room, and one of the trainers there was just having a complete bitch around how virtual classrooms not like face-to-face, and it's not the same, and I'm not going to do it. And I was like, hi, how are you? You getting on okay? And they were like, oh yeah, it's great.
Exactly the same as face-to-face.
And I was like, you're right, it's not the same. It's a different experience. Of course it is. But I'm sorry, I can't give you face-to-face training at the moment. So this is kind of, you know, but it was just hilarious the way they just completely got caught out. Hi, I'm in. Oh God, Erica's here.
What was funny with one, I mean, you have to allow for the fact that when you put them into the breakout rooms, particularly if they've not met for a little while, because I did it with one of the groups that I'm working with, they spend the first 2 or 3 minutes just saying, how are you? What have you been doing? So they don't get onto the question that you've asked them. You've got to give them extra time to do that.
Yeah, definitely.
Like a normal Zoom call, I was like, I was on one on Tuesday night at 7 o'clock, meant to be for an hour. It was 2 hours in the end. And I looked at the clock, it was 16 minutes in, and we'd just been going, hi, you guys, you okay? It's really cool, like, lounges and things like this. And I'm like, sitting there with the facilitator going, come on, like, I have my turn.
But I think that's a really important point, because if you think about it, if we do face-to-face training, people have a chance to have that chat before we actually start what we're doing, whereas they don't necessarily have that opportunity for that connection, especially when they're all as a group. So I think that is such an important point, and we do need to take account of it, because like you were saying as well, Sarah, it's that well-being, isn't it? And you know, making sure that people are okay, and it could be an important part of just keeping somebody sane, just giving them that space.
After that first one, I made sure that I did that took that into account then when I was doing others, thinking you've got to give them a bit of extra time to do that. How are you and what have you been doing things? So I've sort of built that time in now.
It's all learning, isn't it? I think we're all learning. Every single session I run, I'm learning something different. And you know, I've been trained by Hayley, and Hayley's been trained by the LPI. So, you know, in terms of the quality standards, there's so much that you can do with it, but you do learn something new every time, I think, don't you? Which makes me, I know I go on my soapbox about this all the time, but it makes me worry how we've just plonked trainers and coaches and tutors in front of Zoom and gone, right, off you go then, because it's just not fair, really, is it, for those individuals?
What I'm having to do at Wolves University as well. So we've got, I think it's called Canva, which is like just like
Canva's great. Yeah.
Where I've obviously never used it before. So it just goes through sort of all the learnings on there, and they were just like, say, can you just like do the slides? And like you said, it was you just like literally just going like I was delivering it. So I had no interaction with anybody there. And because obviously I've got international students, so when I'm face to face, I can really judge whether, because obviously I'm from Birmingham, so if you're a Peaky Blinders fan, I'm on trend at the moment, that's my saviour. But then for them to be international students and then have an English person, but an English person with quite an accent, it's hard for me to gauge that when I was just going through the slides and having it recorded.
Yeah.
So that's why I sort of put you, Erica, in touch with them, because I was like, it's not fit for purpose at all. And that's one of the university doing that. So yeah, so they are up against it. So I think it'll only come out in the wash when things aren't happening. So like what I said about the wellbeing a few weeks ago, someone on the call yesterday was like, oh, we've seen a dip in wellbeing. And I was like, oh, so what have you been doing the past few weeks? And they're like, nothing, I've just come on today to see what help I can get. And so it was like, we should have been planning this, sort of embedding it and weaving it into every comms, every letter, every conversation. So it's not a problem now, but people just, like you said, bury their head in the sand and don't deal with it until it's a problem, which is the shame.
Yeah.
Which is why they forecast this tsunami of mental health issues afterwards, don't we? And I think that
even yesterday I saw loads of domestic violence.
Yeah, it's scary, isn't it? Really scary. I think because people, the HRD, we speak to them, don't we, regularly, Sarah, on every Tuesday morning on the webinars, and all they're interested at the moment is whether you pay overtime on furlough or not, and things like that. There's a lot of them that are really struggling to lift their head out of that kind of detail. It's fascinating to watch in terms of a case study. They're not HR directors thinking about comms and engagement strategies. The HR directors thinking, God, how do I tell my MD about how we pay people next month? Just fascinating to watch.
That's where my heart feels broken with them, because that's my profession. And they're like, we're at the forefront of this, so that's where I've really stepped up to support them from my business point of view. But then I know that if I put a solicitor out, I'll get great engagement, but that's not what I want to be delivering. I want to be doing the proactive, the strategies, and even them to look at, like, what is this remote working? Do we need less offices? How are we going to manage through outcomes? And that's the conversation I want to be having. And we know the death of the appraisal's gone, so how are we going to manage performance moving forward? But again, it's just literally like, how we're paying staff, and I'm like, no, but yeah, tricky, I think that's where the shift needs to happen. And then like on social media around just like odd questions, but it's just literally they're in the thick of it. But then they're people as well at the end of the day, but they're the ones that are leading on the organisation. So a part of me does think, where's the hope? But we'll get there.
You can only do what you can only do, isn't it?
Erica, I'm going to need to go at 1:45. Sorry, just to.
That's fine. I've got an 11 o'clock as well. So unless there's anything anyone wants to kind of take the conversation or share anything that we've kind of had more of a conversation this morning, haven't we, rather than anything structured? Kind of feeling that's the where people wanted to go.
A couple of things I said I'd follow up on
okay, Christine,
last week. So there was some talk about the accessing of possibly new awarding organisations and whether that was going ahead. So I've been in touch with NOCN, and they are still doing centre approvals where they can. And I think they seem to be quite a forward-thinking awarding organisation. So I would think where NCFE is being put up as an awarding organisation for some of these courses that people could access, I think they're also quite forward thinking. So I think they will be looking at their future business, and especially with this the fact that we've got another 3-week lockdown and now all this continued social distancing and talk about possibly having to wear masks if we do go back to work and all that kind of stuff. So I think they will be looking at ways that they can still engage with providers. So it's worth having a conversation with an awarding organisation if you do want to pick up on a new qual. And then from the functional skills side and the average grades, that's still a whole minefield. So I'll keep my eye on that and let you know as I know anything. But there's still so much uncertainty around that, and where does it just sit with the reforms, or is it does it just sit with the legacy, or does it apply to the reforms? At the minute, it's anything. It's coming out anything that's being tested up until the end of June, sort of into July. But realistically, how many people that would impact on the reform functional skills, nobody really knows. And I think it's just lots of conversations and lots of questions, and things will start to come out in the wash. But I'll keep you posted if I hear anything.
That's brilliant, Christine. Thank you. Yeah, it's just waiting for the guidance to come out with certain things, I suppose, isn't it? With this stuff. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for following up and flagging that as well. That's brilliant. Paul, is there anything from you?
The only thing I'm going to share is following on from the unsuccessful application with Whereby, and it was interesting. They posted, didn't they? They said that the 20 successful applicants, they estimate they're going to be supporting over 25,000 learners. When you average that out per application, they sound like they must be fairly large
big colleges, are they? Do you reckon?
And then you'd query, well, why do they not have the infrastructure and certainly the budget for that type of infrastructure in the first place? But it might be the legacy's 25,000, so it might be the here and now is a lot smaller, but they've suggested it could be a lot bigger. But a point I wanted to make was that following on from that, what we've done with our staff is we've sort of set an internal competition. So we've assigned a tutor a particular platform. So we've got someone doing Google Classrooms, someone's using Aptem, which Julie mentioned in terms of the AELP event on the 30th. Someone else using Zoom and using Teams. And then we've got them to take a particular part of the course and they go into write and deliver it. And we're going to see what works best. So it's peer-to-peer. So everyone is just going to take the chair, deliver, and then everyone else is going to feed back. And what we're going to do is make a decision on what works best, but also it's just to get everyone to be using the technology, but also thinking about the best ways to do it. And what we've been doing is sort of gathering all of the sort of suggestions and everything that's out there in the ether. So, whether it be from icebreakers or whether it be in terms of suggestions about those breakouts, how you test the understanding, but in an interactive way. And then just saying, right, here's a plethora of ideas. You pick what suits you best or what suits the subject matter best, and then come back to us. So D-Day is next Wednesday. So they're going to deliver back to us. And then the idea is that from there, they then take what they're comfortable with, each of them, and then develop it more so that we don't have a complete program.
I love that. That's brilliant. That's kind of that real self-discovery piece as well, isn't it? Yeah, that sounds really good. If you want an external view on your panel of delivery, I would be really interested to sit in and kind of watch what people have come up with. I'd be fascinated. If you've got room for an extra one, let me know.
I won't have a problem with that at all, Erica. They might, but I can't.
Let me know. But I would be fascinated. I'd love to sit in and hear that.
Absolutely.
Fab. Oh, that sounds really good. That's a good way of kind of giving people the ownership to be able to go and do it as well, isn't it? So
yeah, and it takes the microscope off any one individual because everyone's in it and they'll be sharing ideas and best practice and, well, this works really well, why don't you try this? Or if you do this, I'll do this. And then, so yeah, that collaborative approach is working as well. And we're all having to use the technology anyway to get the technology to work, if that makes sense. So yeah, it's working well.
Brilliant. That sounds great. That's a great tip and trick. Okay, we've got 11 minutes left. I'm going to have to scoot off shortly anyway because I've got 11 o'clock. You guys probably have as well. Yeah. Is there anything else that we want to pick up today or that we were due to feed back into? Unfortunately, the UFI, I think there was a lot of people that did apply and who were disappointed, unfortunately. So it'll be fascinating to see the list of providers that come out on that as well. So.
Just let me know if you've got any questions that you want me to put to the HR directors or L&D managers or anything like that. If you want to get any insight from that point of view, then just let me know. I'll be more than happy to do that.
Brilliant. Thank you.
The only other thing that I was going to say was that DFE on Friday announced that there would be further announcements this week around, the minister termed it as a provider relief scheme. Under COVID-19, they've made it clear that for levy providers and employer providers that they won't be eligible because those contracts are between the provider and the employer. The kickback on that has been, well, hang on a minute, then how can you audit it as government and how can you quality assure it as government if it's purely that? So you can't have it both ways, but that's another argument. But for all other providers where they have direct contracts, so that would be non-levy apprenticeship, AEB traineeships, etc., we're still waiting for further announcements. So I'll keep my ear to the ground in terms of what that looks like, and by all means share any information that comes out from that.
Fab. Okay, that's helpful. And yeah, if there is any links or anything, pop them in the chat, because I think people will be interested. And you'll see that I've also pulled the guys from Interqual into the group today. So the marketing manager, the sales manager, and Zoe Dyson, who's been joining us anyway, they've joined this group, so they'll be joining us as of next week. And also Kirsty Hills from, I can't remember the name of the apprenticeship provider, but a construction apprenticeship provider, she's wanted to join as well, so she's going to be joining us next week. So I think there'll be some more people joining us, and for more people for us to talk and share with as well as of next week, which should be good. Fab. Okay, anything else for anyone else? No? Okay, we'll have a great rest of the week. I hope the sun keeps shining for everybody. I'm sure it will. And look after yourself, stay safe, and I'll see you guys at 9:30 next Thursday.
So take care, everyone. Bye.
And you have a good week. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.